Want to just thank everyone for making time in your day today to join us for this first in a series of Zoom artist talks we're planning over the next several weeks. Just please stay tuned to our website or our Facebook page to see details on upcoming Zooms that we're doing. As many of you know, Asheville was hit recently by what was Hurricane Helene. Even though we're 300 miles inland, it's been a bit of a shock to our community here, and we are pivoting, as we did a couple of years ago with COVID, to bring different programming into people's homes and get our artwork in by our fantastic artists in front of eyes far and wide, since Asheville's not necessarily during leaf season, which is usually a very busy time for us, is not necessarily receiving visitors in the same way right now. So thank you again for joining us. If you're not receiving our newsletters and you would like to, please email us. We'll get you on that list. We usually send one out a couple of times a month. So today we are super excited to have glass artist Joanna Manousis with us. I've been a fan of Joanna's work since I first became aware of it over a decade ago. It's just simply exquisite. And we have worked together really since the gallery was first established 7 years ago now. Joanna Manousis holds an MFA in sculpture from Alfred University in New York, and she's currently pursuing a PhD at the National Glass Center through the University of Sunderland in the UK. She's focusing primarily her research on innovative uses of three-dimensional cast glass mirrors, and certainly has earned her place among the most esteemed artists in the field. Her works are held in major public collections across the USA and Europe, including the Ringling Museum in Sarasota, Florida, the Glass Museet in Denmark, and the European Museum of Modern Glass in Germany, among others. She's received nominations for numerous prestigious awards, such as the Louis Comfort Tiffany Foundation Award and the Bombay Sapphire Award for Excellence in Glass. We are thrilled to have her join us today from England, and I know we're all in for a treat today. Certainly an insider's look at what she's working on and how she makes these fantastic pieces. Lots of great visuals, and just really good insight and information. There will be a Q&A opportunity at the end of the Zoom. If anyone has questions in the meantime, please feel free to type your questions into the chat. My colleague Jacob is standing by at the gallery phone, which is 828-505-8550. If anyone has questions that way or inquiries on any of the work that they're seeing, that would be one way to reach us. But we're also able to handle any inquiries via email, or happy to jump on a FaceTime call after the Zoom, explore any of the works that we have here in Asheville from different angles and up close and all that sort of things too. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed guest, Joanna Manousis. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Shifra, for having me. I'm in my studio right now at the Glass Centre. So I'm situated in the northeast of England, in Sunderland. And my husband is a glass artist as well. We moved here for me to pursue my PhD, and he also had a Fulbright residency here. So I'm now coming to the final year of research. So most of the practical work has been done and I'm in write-up mode. So, you know, switching my brain from making to, you know, conceptualizing in text, which it's hard to go back and forth. I have to do one or the other. But I want to kind of show you the lineage of the work from the get-go. Obviously, I won't be showing every object I've made, but I think that looking at the very beginning, it all makes sense. You know, there's a certain strand that follows the trajectory of the work. And I'd really like to show you what I've been working on within the last 5 years during the PhD. So how I got to now, so to speak. So I'm going to get straight into things. I'm going to share my screen with you now. And here we go. Can you see that, Shifra?
Yes.
Yep, that's all good. All right. Okay. So I have been working with glass now for just over 20 years. It's been my entire working career, and I was very fortunate to be one of the last BFA students purely in glass at the University of Wolverhampton. Now, prior to that, I considered myself a painter. I painted from a really young age, and I was really interested in portraiture, really trying to define a person's features. This is an image of an owl, a 6-foot owl that I painted for as a mascot in Tübingen in Germany. Anyway, there was really a diversion in my career, and long story short, I ended up working in glass. But as for those of you that work with glass will know that it's an incredibly difficult material to, harness, to get what's in your mind's eye onto the end of a glass blowing pipe takes years and years. So when I was studying both at Wolverhampton and as a transfer student at Alfred University in New York State, I wanted to bring complexity to very simple forms. So this is just a simple teardrop formation, which is blown in glass and then painted with oils. These were women in my class at the time at Alfred. And so things were really refined through sketches. I wanted to kind of bring my two-dimensional kind of ability to the glass. Blown glass is very much about the vessel. So I wanted to kind of extend the narrative and really enliven the surface, bringing the gaze of somebody else within the glass. And at that time, in the early 2000s, images of women from the 50s were kind of coming back as, trendy and kitsch. And I found there was a certain irony to that in this somewhat, present day equality, these glamorous housewives depicted within their roles as the domestic goddess. So these are bubbles of glass, which are blown. I would paint them with a high fire enamel. So all of the labor here is really in the painting. But rather than a canvas, which, you put to one side and it's fine, you're bringing this back up to temperature and attaching the bubble back onto the glass blowing iron. So you're really at the mercy of the glass. It can crack. It took a long time for me to be able to get the temperature right so that these paintings would survive the blowing process. So this series is called Self-Contained Spray. And this was the first body of finalized work that really evolved from my undergraduate degree. So it was looking at domesticity and women's work. The bottom of the bottle is blown and the top part is cast. This is a piece that's in Momentum Gallery at the moment, which is the last piece within that series that's available. And it's actually showing two portraits. So there's an image on the front and on the back. It's 28 inches in height. So it's the largest Groll piece that was made within the series. Now, alongside the kind of pop-esque, three-dimensional pieces, was this installation of lace. So again, looking at women's work, looking at the material qualities of glass in that it can be both fragile and strong. I wanted to create something very complex from something extremely simple, which is just a simple rod of glass. So I pulled out stringers of glass, cut them into tiny little marinis, and then meticulously fused these together into single sheets to make something that is expanded and larger than life. So this is the finished piece. This canopy of lace can be installed within a window to really amplify the light source coming into the room, to cascade light and create very dramatic shadow. It was a finalist in the Bombay Sapphire Awards and was in a number of exhibitions before it was flown over to the States, and it's now with Momentum. One thing that's really great about the show that Momentum has currently is that it shows the trajectory of my work from the onset with those spray bottles to the current practice. So rather than, just showing what is current, they're really kind of embracing that variety, which is really nice. So after finishing my undergraduate degree in glass, I went back to Alfred University for a 2-year MFA in sculpture. And I came back to reflectivity and the mirror, something that I was really interested in my paintings, where I would splice an image and paint it to create different perspectives. This is an image from Sir John Sloane's house in London. And I was interested in how mirrors were used to create a fraudulent sense of reality, you know, an inverted depiction of the world and the environment. They were used to kind of amplify a light source within a space, where then, when there was no electricity, mirrors were used to bounce candlelight around the room, but they were also used to suggest excess space and excess wealth. So these are some sketches of installations. I wanted to kind of come away from the pedestal object and really play with space. My intention was to really bring in the viewer's gaze within the work. This is a little bit of process. From the get-go, I've been interested in detail, both in two-dimensional and three-dimensional form. And in order to get that within a blown piece of glass, I figured out how to use a mold and bring that mold up to a firing temperature of around 1100 degrees Fahrenheit, so that the glass would take on every detail. So this is a piece called Reaching an Ulterior Realm. It was an installation of mylar balloons that was used to reflect, quite literally and metaphorically, the transience of life. So you can see here that there's a myriad of bronze arrows that look to be in flight for these balloons that are easy targets. This is an image of the deflated balloon. And so this is a combination of blown glass used with the mold. This is a piece called Inverted Vanitas. So these installations were all within my MFA exhibition. Again, looking at positives and negatives, whether it be in the mirror or literally in the glass piece. So this is a triptych of glass frames which are receding into the wall. So rather than the frame being the three-dimensional part of the painting, everything is flipped in on itself. The frame, you know, is flush with the wall, lit with neon to give an ambient glow that pulls the viewer's gaze in. And then it really pays homage to this little still life in 3 dimensions. So I was really interested in Dutch Flemish still life paintings and how a painter would, you know, spend their entire lives perfecting the perfect lemon or pomegranate or oyster to give you this, you know, again, this fake reality, the thought that you could step into the painting. And so I spent about 8 months trying to create a pomegranate that would look like the real fruit, that had the suggestion of the texture and kind of juiciness of the seeds and skin, but then also had a mirrored flesh that could entwine the viewer's gaze. Again, kind of bringing this kind of iconography of vanity and desire into the object. So after finishing my master's degree, I moved to Philadelphia before then going on to Ohio. And I really wanted the idea to dictate the method of the making for such a long time. And that's why I really kind of grappled different techniques with glass and other materials so that the idea could dictate the method of the making. However, this piece was quite pivotal to the 12-year trajectory of me really being interested in dimensional mirrors. And when I say dimensional mirrors, I mean mirrors that contain detail. For centuries, mirrors have only been applied to blown and sheet glass applications where the surface is completely pristine. The glass will only reflect if it's clear and shiny. And so naively, when I started this particular piece called Distilled Portrait, I felt that if I created a core or a negative space within the glass that once mirrored, it would become reflective. And the reason I wanted that reflection was that I was creating these distillery jars containing objects that represented individuals. And I wanted the collector to be personified by the magpie. Now, for those of you that don't know much about this particular species, they're one of only 5 species in the world that have the gene for self-awareness. And when they look in a mirror, they understand that it's their reflection. There's a saying for women that love jewelry, oh, she's such a magpie, because, you know, their nests are filled with shiny objects. You know, they hoard and collect. So I wanted the viewer to see themselves within the wings of the bird, for the viewer to kind of get a sense that there's a bit of magpie within us all. And what happened when I mirrored that internal space was that it looked like brushed silver. And the reason for that is that the surface of the glass, when it's cast, has an opacity to it. It's the interaction of the mold with the glass. So it set me on this trajectory of trying to figure out how I could combine the viewer's gaze. I felt that there would be a real richness in dialogue, just in the ability for a viewer to see themselves within an entity. So the glass is literally acting as a lens for this negative space inside. This is a piece called Dominant Sophia. It's a very important piece because it was the first wall-based installation within my studio practice. It's around 6 feet in the round, and took about a year to create. It was for a solo exhibition at Urban Glass in Brooklyn, New York. And I wanted to create this rose window that would usually be, you know, an oculus within a church to infiltrate sacred light into a space. And to turn it in on itself so that the light is reflected to the viewer, who in turn sees themselves within a myriad of wheat kernels. I wanted the viewer to kind of get a sense of the complexity of society, that we're all grains within the complex construct that is, you know, society. What happened was I cast these pieces in crystal and had them hydrofluorically polished in order to take away that opacity. But because of that granular nature and the small, you know, shape of the kernel, it negated any reflective quality. So with every piece that I was making, I was getting one step further to trying to figure out how I could embody a reflection inside the glass. This piece just shows you what the glass looks like prior to mirroring. This is another large piece called Demeter's Rose. It ended up being too thick to be able to have it acid polished, which, you know, acid comes up to about just under boiling point. So, you know, you have to be very careful when putting thick pieces of glass into it. But it shows you how the glass is meticulously polished so that you can see the negative space inside. Again, I've tried to kind of use this negative space to allude to other materials. So this is a piece called Par Diamonds. It was exhibited with Momentum a few years ago and went to a private collector a year and a half ago. This piece is actually inspired by a marble facade within a tomb for Catherine Parr, who was the 6th wife of Henry VIII. I was really interested in how nature was used to kind of beautify decay in a way. And so I took the marble facade within the chapel and fragmented it into this pattern, whereby I've reverse painted the interiors to look like the marble. This is a little video here, so you can actually see the dimensionality of the piece. These pieces almost look like brooches if they're not situated next to somebody, but they're actually quite expansive and large. So, you know, this piece would take me around 7 months to make. Everything is considered just in terms of, you know, how the pieces are situated, the way that the paint kind of fades into the glass and disperses, as does the pattern of the diamonds. This is a rendition of pieces that kind of came from the Par Diamond series, but rather than using the motif of the flower and the leaf with the berry as a negative space, it's turned into a positive, which is cast in black opaque glass and then cold work to kind of illuminate little details. So it kind of alludes to the mourning jewelry that was used and celebrated in the Victorian era. These are just a few images of pieces that I've worked on, refining the glass further, just in method, but also idea. These were prisms within prisms that were used for a piece called Indra's Web. I felt that if I took my negative space from a faceted piece of glass, that it would realize a mirror. However, the way that the mold degrades in the kiln causes, surface kind of stippling, and almost like a desert landscape kind of effect. So this is a piece that I made that I was really close to. You can actually see my my reflection there. This is a very pared down rose window, where the thinner spikes radiate from the wall 1 inch further than the other pieces. So it kind of gives this sense of movement as the viewer, encircles it, almost like a magic eye effect. And for those of you glassies out there that like to see process, these are just a few images of my molds. So, working with positive to negative, back and forth. This is a rubber mother mold taken from a decanter, and a mold of a piece of rope that has been cast in investment material, which is the heat resistant material used for the mold. The rope is embedded within the mold. The glass flows into that mold, but it cannot penetrate where that core is placed. And then after the firing, I meticulously pick out that investment material, clean it, cold work the object, and then finally mirror it. So this is a piece called Golden Thread. The decanters act as a landscape to, this continuous thread, which represents the verb, or the noun, I should say, the golden thread, the invisible links that bind us all in life. And I wanted to kind of personify that in these decanters that are used as vessels, quite literally, for the spirits. So just to show you a little bit of process here. So, I'm really at the moment looking at the history of the mirror, which is fascinating and complex. Mirrors have been used, in science, the domestic realm, within art making. But I really wanted to hone in on mirrors within the domestic sphere and within art practice. So this is just a few images, some plates of early glass making, where glass would be rolled on a copper table. So it would be poured onto copper, rolled out into a sheet, or it would be blown into a cylinder and then cut and splayed out into a sheet. Nevertheless, everything was meticulously polished by hand in order for the mirror to look reflective. So it was really only until the Industrial Revolution, when tin float glass was invented, that glass could be, made cheaply and available to the masses. Also, the invention of the chemical silver deposition technique rather than tin mercury allowed glass mirror processing to be less toxic. So it was really only, the last 150 years that mirrors have become objects of the everyday. But prior to that, they were incredibly magical and entwined with superstition. So this is an image of the Glass Center where I'm currently working. It's a wonderful place. Unfortunately, it will be closing in July 26. So who knows, but I'm glad it won't, affect the PhD. So I've done a lot of material investigations looking at how some of the most popular glasses used within glass art practice behave with different molds and the effects of that with the mirroring process. So I wanted my research to be available and of use to as many makers as possible. And although, cast dimensional mirrors have not really been considered within art practice, everybody is interested in surface refinement and precision. So I felt that it would be of benefit and a contribution of knowledge to the field. These are some samples taken from an optical flat lens as a base model, a perfectly pristine surface. The image on the left shows the tests prior to mirroring. So black is good. You can see through the glass. White is bad because you can see the opacity, the surface sticking. On the right-hand side, we've got the mirrored samples. Black is bad because it shows contamination, but silver is good because you can, tell that it's a mirror aesthetic. And you can see my iPhone on the lower right-hand corner of that image to the right-hand side. What I didn't realize, however, is that there is an incredible palette of mirroring aesthetics that can be had with, different combinations of glasses with investment materials. And although in the beginning I was looking for this aha moment of, the perfect reflection, the viewer being able to see themselves within the mirror, I wanted to really embrace all of these nuances where, the mirror can look like crocodile skin or moon rock or peach skin. So taking those open face tests, I started working with objects in the round, different ways of making the mold. These are the tests from that. Using boron nitride coatings. I mean, I'm not going to go into too much detail about the technicalities, but this is an object made with bullseye glass. Bullseye would always create a contaminated mirror because of that surface sticking. However, having done the PhD research, I was able to make this piece using bullseye and have a reflective quality within the mirror aesthetic. Obviously, there's so much texture in the rope that it negates the ability to see oneself. Now, from all that testing, I've wanted to make, works that take on both the practical applications and advancements in mirror making, but also address the history and associations of mirrors. Mirrors were considered all-seeing eyes that represented, higher energy, God. They were a tool that allowed us to perceive what we cannot ourselves, which is, our image. They were considered passive reflectors of light, which were connected to the moon, in that the moon is a reflector of the sun's light. So there were so many, symbolisms and qualities that the mirror induced: good, evil, positivity, negativity, and so on. So these are some pieces whereby I've taken the silhouette of an eye and created a concave lens inside, taken from a blown piece of glass. And you can see here that I have to kind of remove myself from the aesthetic quality of the mirror. What will be, will be. And interestingly, because I'm taking that natural surface of the cast, it creates this pattern quality where it really registers the flow of the glass hitting the mold, that material interaction. So every piece is different. And I've actually, deliberately cracked some of these pieces so that rather than the cracked mirror being a negative attribute, it's actually a positive in that it is the only part of the lens that reflects the viewer. So you can see that crack on the left-hand side versus an image of a fully polished crystal mirror that in turns it flips the environment in which it's situated, just like an image would be flipped upside down at the back of the human eye. So this is the series. This is called Iris Obscura. There's a version of this currently at the Bellevue Museum through Bullseye Projects. And so far I've shown you, investment cast glass objects, where the glass is transformed into a shape in the kiln. It's meticulous, arduous, physically taxing. It takes a long time to conceive an object in that way. And so I wanted to look at different materials that would give me the ability to work a little bit more expediently and also in a way that would be more environmentally friendly and would also give the client a little bit more ownership on the design and configuration of the work. So these are just a few ideas that I put together. As you can see, the image on the left shows the design and the image on the right shows you the finished piece. This is called Aurum. It's created from a pentagon, a diamond, and a kite shape using blown and press molded graphite molds. So graphite is an amazing material in that the glass does not stick. So it allows you to create repeated forms with minimal waste that can be, as you can see, configured in many different ways. So this is a piece currently at Momentum Gallery called Electri. You can see that there's a little splash of gold at the point of those pentagon shapes as the color is diffused within the mold. This is a piece that is really expansive. So it's 251 inches wide, and is now with Celebrity Cruise. So if you happen to be on the Beyond ship, you will see that. And 2 years ago, I had some Arts Council support to look at the prisms that you saw in the Indra's web piece earlier. I wanted to create that complex prismatic shape that would take, hours and hours of hand polishing to create, a refined surface, so that I could create pieces that are really expansive. I wanted something that would really kind of envelop the viewer. So this is a piece called Celeste, which was in a recent exhibition here in Sunderland. It's my biggest piece to date. It's 26 feet wide, 440 parts. And it's a larger configuration of a piece that Momentum currently have called Indra. I can show you some of these forms a little later, but it combines the investment cast pieces. So the larger pieces are investment cast, and then the smaller pieces are press molded. This is an image of the Athenaeum space where I had my show. So it was nice because I could really show, the samples, that kind of, lineage to get to these final pieces, which kind of took on the appearance of art pieces within themselves. So this is the palette of effects created. This is really kind of refining all of those aesthetics into just 5 different pieces. So bringing the magpie back into the piece. I have this issue where, if I can't articulate what's in my mind's eye, it's almost as though I can't let it go. And that's why I've been really trying to create this perfect reflectivity in the bird. This is just a few images of my process. So, it takes months and months of, working with different mold applications to create these negative spaces. The image on the left shows a spliced vertical split mold for a dome. And on the right-hand side, you can see the bird in the oven waiting for the glass to be put in. Here on the left, you can see the bird before acid polishing. And on the right, you can see the bird after acid polishing. So this is a piece that's currently with Momentum, one of the sample pieces for distilled portrait. And you can see how that opacity has been removed. And here are those finished pieces. So here we have the magpie again. And I have this piece in my studio behind me. You can see that the taxidermy is interacting with its reflection within the jar. There is a really, reflective quality in this bird. It's not quite there in terms of full reflection. And I am currently in the process of making another one using the techniques that are present in the bird that Momentum currently has, which does combine the viewer. You can see this dance in material between hand sculpted clay to a mother mold so that I can duplicate it in plaster, further refine it, make another mold, cast it in glass so that it can be polished before a final master mold is made for the core. Here's the mold. So this is the mold of the jar. You can see that surface opacity. So there's a lot of cutting and grinding, and there's the finished piece. Just a few details there of the bird. And thank you so much. I know that Momentum Gallery have a few images to show you, and then I can show you some of the pieces in the studio and we can open things up to questions.
Thank you, Joe. As evidenced by all these wonderful pictures you put together, there is no one making work like this other than you. And we are just so proud to be a part of it here in a small way, and just bear witness to the incredible work that you're making. It is a real treat and really interesting to see all the things that you're doing in England, and the testing to find what effects are getting with the combinations that you're putting together, And I can get from what you've said that even maybe what initially started off as trying to get that perfect reflection, you found a lot of beauty in the nuances that didn't necessarily achieve that and are reflecting in other ways in your work. So
Yeah.
kudos to
Yeah.
you for doing that. It is incredible to see the amount of work that goes into each of these pieces, but even more so, the thought that you put behind what you're saying with the work that you're making and the relationship that it has to historic context and things like you said about the magpie and self-awareness and the moon. And so bringing in all these different aspects to your work that aren't necessarily readily apparent upon first, kind of initial visual experience of the work, but with a little time or a little bit of the insights that you shared, it just deepened our appreciation for the work even more. So thank you very much. I wanted to make sure again that everyone knows that there will be time for questions and answers where you can ask questions directly of Joe later here in a few minutes. But in the meantime, if you have something that you want to say, feel free to add stuff to the chat and we'll get to those as well. We have also, after the Zoom is over, if anyone is interested in knowing a little bit more about any of these pieces, that again, we have at Momentum, or even anything that you saw there, a question comes up after we close for adjourn for the day, feel free to email us and we will get those questions answered as well, or look at works that we have here from different angles and that sort of thing as well. Our phone number is 828-505-8550 or email at momentumgallery.com. I know that one of the things that we wanted to do next was to show some of the work that we have here at Momentum. So I'm going to get Jacob to share his screen and show some of those slides. And Joe, I think you should be able to talk as well about any of these pieces that come up visually on people's screens. Some of which you already mentioned, I know, in your remarks earlier, but maybe we can have a little conversation about some of these as they come up.
Sure. Yeah. So this is just a portrait with Celeste, which you saw earlier. If you want to move to the next image. So this is a smaller configuration of those prism pieces. So this is using the graphite application that you saw earlier. So Indra's web is essentially a story, a Hindu proverb that speaks of Indra's web, which is a complex construct of jewels, which again is symbolic of society. So the premise is that we are all jewels within the web. We all reflect one another. And if it doesn't matter what you do in the world, whether you are, a lawyer, a bus driver, an artist, everybody is needed in order for society to function. So if you take one of those jewels away from the web, the rest will falter. And I thought that that was a really beautiful metaphor. And I wanted to have the viewer interacting with and to see themselves within these jewels that also looked like globular starbursts. I wanted that kind of celestial feel. We're made of carbon. We're made of stardust. So again, I wanted to bring that kind of metaphor into the equation. So although this is small, it is still 91 inches in length, but a small snippet, from the larger piece that you saw earlier. If you'd like to advance the slide, here's a detail. So these all hover from the wall by about an inch. And there's a really nice kind of play with light. So when the light hits them, it creates a rainbow cascade on the wall. If you'd like to go to the next shot. Okay, so this is Electri. So this is what I would consider a pendant piece. So, you might see a piece that expands, 26 feet on the wall and say, well, I don't have the space for that. But the beauty about these forms is that, you could have just 10 of them in a cluster. So a piece of that larger whole. These do reflect. They're not quite as pristine as a mirror that you'd see in a bathroom, but they act as canvases. They really respond to light. They change depending on their environment. And you can see just that subtle coloration there in the pentagons. So the blown pieces can be made in any color. So they are completely customizable, which is really nice. Obviously, the rose windows, the pieces where I'm using investment cast glass, it is what it is, right? But these can be expanded, contracted, and so on. If you want to just go to the next slide. Again, another detail. So this is chrysalis, a little more expansive. This is, I think, around 4 feet wide. Like
6
you,
feet wide.
can,
6 feet
it's
wide.
what,
About
it's
six, a
what,
little over 6 feet wide and a
oh, it's
little over
6 feet,
5
sorry.
feet tall. It's the piece behind me.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. If you could advance to the next slide. So you've seen this piece, this is mirror palette. So this is, I wanted to use 2 birds that really have very varying degrees of reflectivity. So the bird on the left, you can see yourself within the wings. These are almost like a test piece, but they riff on that kind of Victoriana, notion of the taxidermied bird within the dome. How collectibles were, or keepsakes were put under domes of glass to kind of give them an elevated status. The bottoms of these are milled aluminum, so they rest, they're cushioned inside that cup. The image on the piece on the right-hand side shows the effects of boron nitride, which would usually repel the glass. It's like Teflon for glass sticking, but this actually caused a black mirror. So I've painted that boron nitride specifically on the wings to create that variation. Okay, you could advance to the next slide. This is Black Diamonds for Catherine Parr that you saw earlier. It's a one-off piece. Many of the works that I make, I never usually work, well, they're usually one of a kinds. So there are the odd piece where I've made, an addition. So this is all opaque glass, again, hovering from the wall about an inch. Really plays nicely with the polished points versus the opaque.
And Joe, I just want to say, you did a little something different with this, even though it's made with all the same glass. Some are polished a little bit more because they seem to alter between the diamonds, which is hard to see in this photograph, between a little more shiny, like polished surface and a little bit more matte surface. Is that my imagination or?
No, yeah, they were all, they all have kind of a satin quality, and then they've been polished on the high points to kind of give more of a contrast.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And of course, lace. This is really the start of my career in glass. This is a really sizable piece that spans around 10 feet wide. It's a shame we don't have a picture of somebody next to it, but it's taking.
We can switch over to that here in a second.
Oh yeah, sure. But what I did was I created canes of glass in ivories, creams, whites, and clear, and separated them in size. And then it was a case of, drawing out a piece of lace and placing these little tiny marinis in situ. So Laura is
We're trying to get it.
next to the piece right now. Yeah. Is that the last slide? If it is the last slide, we could pin the and then of course have self-contained spray. So this is the largest piece, the largest bottle within that series. Each piece was one of a kind, and this is the only piece that had 2 portraits painted within the glass. So there's a stretching, obviously, that happens when the glass is blown. So it creates this kind of morphed, elongated effect. It was actually very difficult because the white doesn't like to heat up quite as quickly as the black. The black absorbs heat far more, so they were really difficult to blow into a perfect conical flask because of that, heat differential between the 2 colors. Okay,
We're going to try and pin and share this imagery from Laura. There we go. So this is lace. Can you just slow down a little bit because it's having a hard time like focusing? There we go. And now, you know, you can see the intricacy of this all made, this pattern of lace all made from bits of Millefiori cane that Joe made in very clear white and sort of a creamy color that were all pulled as cane, if I'm not mistaken, broken up into bits and then hand set on this sheet crystal and adhered to the crystal to form this beautiful pattern of, what is it, 16th century lace?
Yeah, it's I think it's 17th century. It's antique lace. Yeah, this was the start of my carpal tunnel. You know, repetitive strain, cutting up, you know, with tile nippers, you know, thousands of Marinis, and then silly, you know, you do stupid things when you're young, right? Just standing over a table for hours with my head down, you know, don't do that. But
Well,
yeah, these are, I mean, it looks very delicate, but the structure of the lace is actually reinforced with water jet cut sheet glass, so it reinforces the structure. And then they're simply, you know, suspended on hooks with nylon, transparent nylon cord.
I just
So
want to say, Joe, that I remember how excited we were when we placed the companion piece to lace called Veil with the Huntsville Museum.
yeah, yeah,
and that
was
one is backed in mirror, so it kind of also comes full circle to the mirror experiments and the work that you're making.
yeah. Again, it's like pulling the gaze, having the viewer, you know, smothered, veiled quite literally with the glass details. See, that's the thing with glass. It's such a seductive material. It really is, you know, I think people are kind of they gravitate to it because it is inherently beautiful. But I use that as a mechanism because I feel like when you kind of bring the gaze of the viewer and entwine it with the piece, I feel that it's in those moments that people stay present with the work and ask questions. And it's also, you know, they are part of the narrative of the work. So that's why it's so important to me that I can kind of create that that imprint of the gaze with the glass surface.
We're just going to pan around the show. You might see me in the film, and I apologize. But I'm sitting in the room actually as we speak. So that's the Indra piece again.
Yeah.
And I love what you said, Joe, about the Indra's web and also like the golden thread you were talking about, this sort of invisible metaphor of us all being connected and interconnected. And I love that those are themes that you explore in your work, as well as the reflection. There's just a really nice thoughtfulness that's apparent when you hear you talk about the work.
Thank you.
Both in the making and in the conception of the pieces.
Yeah, so I can show you some pieces in my studio in just a second of the cast versus the.
Let's look at this one for a moment. The piece that went to the Ringling is also opalescent. And there was a few pieces that you showed, but they're kind of few and far between where you get this kind of effect in your work. Is that something with the heat and the way it strikes that you get that effect? It's different than the reflection, like the silvering.
Yeah, so this is a piece called Lunar Opal. It is a teardrop formation that it's almost like pieces of a puzzle. Oh, is there some reverberation there? A little bit of reverberation.
I'm sorry, I just muted myself.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah, so to go back to that piece, what you can see is a crescent moon inside. And this is a glass that you can dictate the opacity of the opaline by the time you hold it at about 1225 Fahrenheit in the kiln. So it was a glass that Bullseye wanted me to do some beta testing on. And rather than just making one piece with this glass, I did testing holding that glass from 15 minutes to 200 hours at a developing temperature so that I could create this incredible ombre effect between transparent to opaque milk white. So, and my thought in this was to create an object that looked to diffuse and use those opalescent qualities while also responding to opals being connected, being waterstones. Again, the moon connected to the tides. These opals are washed up on the shore. This is a smaller iteration to the claw set pieces that have this almost jewel-like quality. It's almost like adornment, for the wall. Yeah, it's a glass. I do have a few boxes left, but I don't think that Bullseye released it onto the market because with every batch, it can vary in the way it interacts. So, for example, I did all my testing, thought this glass is incredible, ordered a couple of boxes, and it behaved completely different when I cast the piece. So, so yeah, there you go. It makes you work, this material, I'll tell you that.
It's exquisite. Sure. Do you want to see the piece behind me? Because that was another one of these ones that you're blowing these a little differently. This series that you say is can be configured out of three shapes: the diamond, the kite, and the pentagon, into small or very large, expansive compositions. I'm not sure. I know that they're blown into a mold, right? Is that the
Yeah,
part?
so yes, it's graphite.
Graphite.
Yeah. So they're incredibly expensive to create the mold, but once you have them, you can make hundreds of forms so this is two different processes. The diamonds and the kites are press molded, so the glass is ladled hot into the mold, and then a shape, a positive shape of a diamond that's smaller is pushed in to create a negative. And then everything is, annealed, cold worked, mirrored, and then backed with a strut. The pentagons are blown. So that's a 3-part mold process. You can see the backing strut there. So the pentagons are a blow molded process. So that's when you're blowing the glass, you have more control over color. So yeah, the pentagons can be blown in different colors, and because of that point in the shape, you always have more of a saturated color quality at the point versus the edges of that pentagon as that color disperses. So
Those
a nice opportunity to kind of dictate color there and pattern.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I know that someone had mentioned in the chat, how do these hang? Are they with a template? And there absolutely are. Each one of these elements on any of the multi-element installations is numbered. And Joe meticulously makes a template that corresponds to each of those. And through whatever hanging method, these machined pieces that have been affixed to the back of the glass that I just showed by lifting off the diamond on the piece that's on the screen right now, or other methods, it's all very detailed in painstaking detail to make it very easy to install, or certainly can be arranged to have a professional installer do these anywhere in the world. But the craftsmanship is impeccable on all of Joe's works, and the way that they attach to the wall is very secure and able to be recreated time and time again, as long as you hold on to that template.
Yeah, I know, don't lose the template. I do have a bit of an archive because I think about the future and the fact that someone will along the line say, oh gosh, I moved and I didn't take the template. It happens, So I try and be good about keeping a catalog, and I also keep my molds. They do age out over time like any sculptural material does. But I never throw them away. just in case, you know, I need to revisit a piece or make another component. Would you like to speak? Would you like me to talk a little bit about pieces I have here, Jordan, and then we can open it up to questions? Or
That would be great. Let's see what's behind you there in the studio.
so
Thank
I'm on my
you.
computer right now. I just wanted to show you some pieces that are right here next to me. So this is how big the prism is, that's been actually hand faceted, made with the investment mold. So, you know, as I said, you know, some of these mirrors negate any reflective quality, but it looks as though a sculpted piece of metal is embedded in the glass, which would be somewhat physically impossible because of the different coefficiency of expansion between metal and glass. So this is claw set. It's a tension set process. So there's no adhesive here, and you can see the strut at the back. So this is, you know, a couple of months of fabrication. And then we have this piece, you know, very shiny. This is an example of the piece in Indra and Celeste that's been made with the graphite. So not as refined in surface, but there are variations just because, you know, when the mold is cold, it creates a ripple effect in the mirror. So there are different nuances in those pieces. I am working on a rose window currently for a show next year at the Glass Center that combines the mirror. So because my pieces are often modular, I can, you know, dictate the mirror quality and have varying different qualities within a single piece. So I'll be making a piece that goes from a black mirror to a full high polish and everything in between. So this is a smaller piece within a series called Demeter's Rose. So I made that piece in 2 different sizes. The large one takes me about a year to fabricate. The smaller one, which is around 33 inches in the round, now that I've got the mother molds, takes about 6 to 7 months, depending on my schedule. I have small kids, so I can't put in the 8-hour work days anymore, unfortunately. And then I just wanted to show you the magpie. And the bird on the top is actually almost like a work of art in himself. He's a humanely taxidermied magpie from a woman in Holland who is absolutely astonishing in her artistry with taxidermy, and she ethically sources the birds. So he is poised deliberately to look as though he's interacting with his reflection inside the jar. And that's all negative space. What you see as a silver bird is actually a hollow. And then after polishing, the bird has been coated with silver nitrate to create that you know, reflective quality. You can see various pieces in progress, so waxes of bottles, old jars, you know. Sometimes pieces stay with you for a long time. So storage is really important. My tests. So these are some of the tests that I'm using for that rose window, looking at, you know, crackle effects. So this is like a crocodile skin one and a really reflective polish one. Going to, you know, something that looks like charcoal. So yeah, lots of things going on at the moment. After that show at the Athenaeum, I felt kind of depleted. So I'm only just kind of coming up for, you know, to the surface. I had to take a rest after, you know, that 26-foot piece. So if you know anyone that has a really big wall in a public space that needs filling, I am your girl. Okay. Everything is in boxes here. It's ready to go. So yeah, my small British home wouldn't really, I'd have mirrored prisms in every space, you know, if I had it up myself. So anyway, I'm just wondering if anybody has any questions. It's so nice, by the way, to see people I know and love in the room. Richard, Melanie, just a few. I think Brian was in there, Anya, Evelyn. I mean, I could keep going. But yeah, thank you for joining me today. So if you have any questions, let me know. Let me know
Yeah,
now.
at this point, feel free to ask directly. There was a lot of nice comments in the chat that Joe can see, and we'll look at when she has a little, not as much attention focused on the Zoom. But thank you again for all those comments. And again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to shoot. Just unmute yourself.
Say hi to Zach and Kevin for me, and
I will.
and hug all the gang over there at Sunderland, if any are still left. But whatever's left, tell them I say hi.
Thank you. They're all looking for jobs at the moment. So if,
I am sure of that. I am sure of that.
we're going down with the ship.
It's not much better in the States right now, so sad.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's great that, you know, Jordan and Shifra are keeping everything alive, you know, awareness. So it's important.
It's important.
Well, we want to thank everybody for joining us, and especially we want to thank you, Joe. I have had the privilege of attending some of your talks in the past, and I learned so much when you speak, not only about the process, but really the intention behind your work. I've always been particularly fond of the magpies, and when you explain them, I start to understand why you keep coming back to them, because I keep enjoying you coming back to them. We are very grateful for this opportunity with the gallery and the people who have attended. If you have questions, feel free to email us at email@momentumgallery.com. You are welcome to give us a call at 828-505-8550. We are happy to jump on FaceTime with anybody and show details with the work. Specifically some of the elements, because of the shininess via Zoom, the glass doesn't translate in the same way as it does in person, but we've noticed that in FaceTime with a very deliberate one-on-one camera, it may be a little more true to the reality in the gallery and in person seeing the work. So, Jordan, did you have anything that you wanted to say before we close?
Thank you, Shifra. Yeah, I just want to thank Joe again. Thank everyone again for joining us. And we will look forward to more of these events. But for today, this pretty much concludes our program. Joe, thank you so much for making time in your schedule and in your life to tell us about your amazing, amazing work. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you for having me. And after this, I'll be able to look at all the chat because I haven't had a chance to look, but thanks everyone for coming.
I hope everyone has a good day.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.